Shot glass of recovery, working the 12 steps, listen to fellows speak. You can listen in wherever you may be. It's a shot glass of recovery.
Hi, I'm Lisa, the host of A Shot Glass of Recovery. Thanks for joining me again today. If this is your first time listening, welcome. You're in the right place. Isn't it amazing to discover you're no longer alone? That's exactly what this podcast is all about, carrying the message of hope I found in the rooms of recovery. Who knew those cold, hard chairs in church basements and clubhouses would hold so much healing? If you love what you hear, please take a moment to support the show by liking, subscribing, and following us on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. Your support helps us grow and reach others on their recovery journeys. We'd also love to hear from you. Leave a review and share how this podcast has impacted your path. Your feedback means so much to us. You can also send an email to ashotglassofrecovery@gmail.com. And to keep A Shot Glass of Recovery pouring out fresh content, consider making a financial contribution at paypal.me/A Shot Glass of Recovery. Whether it's $1 or $25, your generosity keeps this community thriving, and we are so grateful for your support. On today's episode, we've got something special for you, a Lisa Pontification. These are the moments where I dive into my personal inventories, journals, or riff off a page of recovery literature. So, grab your shot glass of recovery, it's one for the road, and let's get into it. And one final note, the opinions I share are mine alone. They do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do I consider myself speaking for AA as a whole. All right, we're gonna get started. I think we're gonna have people flowing in late, or not, and that's okay. All right, page 144. Everybody ready? Okay, you may hear me growl a little bit as my dog is distracting by cottage goers. She doesn't realize we don't own the property, we only rent it. So stand down. It's not yours. Not a girl. Okay, guys. Another thing I like to do, we've done this with the family afterwards. We did this with 2 wives, and now we're doing it with 2 employers as well, is sort of point out the repetition, the repetitive nature of this book. So we're on page 144, but it's going to repeat a lot of the things that we've already heard throughout the book. And I think that's brilliant because as an alcoholic, I have a fact-forgetting, fault-finding mind. That's me. That describes me. I forget facts. I go right to fiction, and I forget things. So the book is written expertly when it reminds us over and over and over again, and they're going to do that now. It says, we suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who is to attend your patient during treatment. And I've underlined and highlighted this. If, and there's that little word, if you've been along for the ride for this big book study, you'll know that I often draw your attention to the word if, because it is one of the most important, smallest words in the big book, because it basically means the next outcome resides on your decision. You know, if you do something, you're going to get well. If you don't, then you're not. So if the book is read, the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. So this is a great reminder of the necessity of striking while the iron is hot. This is why we try to dispel the myth that, oh, you can do 1 step a year or take your time, do it at your own pace. As I start to get my things back and I'm suffering less because I've distanced myself from my last drunk, my last debauch, I'm less and less likely to follow suggestions because things are starting to be okay. And then my mind gets involved. And remember, my mind created these problems in the first place. And so with that same mind, I start to think, do I really need this program? Maybe I wasn't that bad. I'm not an alcoholic after all. Which is why it's very important to get into the steps while we have a little bit of reasonableness about us. And that was beat into us, usually from our last debauch, as they say, our last debacle. So I love this, that even in two employers, and they're talking about a doctor and his patient, I can highlight this, and it reminds me of sponsor to sponsee. In the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. We hope the doctor, and so in my mind I've replaced the doctor with sponsor, will tell the patient, the sponsee, the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. When the man is presented with this volume, it is best that no one tell him he must abide to its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. So, and I always joke that I have a sponsor who gave directions, like orders. There were no suggestions. So I always kind of chuckle at this, and they're like, oh, you better just don't tell them that they must. And it was presented to me in that way. You must if you don't want to die. That's how it was presented to me. You don't have to, but if you don't want to die, then you should do this. This is what I did. So really, this is just a reminder, like it is by suggestion only. And it's a great reminder for anyone working with sponsees too. We can't get people drunk and we can't get them well. So that's why it is a suggestion only. I know some of you also sponsor people and you probably invited them to this big book study and you're like, yep, can't drag the horse to water. You can drag the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I see that. I see that frustration sometimes, but it's in letting go that we find our freedom, right? You just carry the message. That's all you can do. So when the man is presented with this volume, it is best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. He has to decide that for himself. That really is the first step, right? They have to make that decision for themselves. No one can make that decision for the alcoholic. Many have tried and failed. You are betting, of course, that your changed attitude plus the contents of this book will turn the trick. Now here they're talking about the changed attitude of the employer, but you could also see the repetitive nature and you can get from this the changed attitude of the alcoholic plus the contents of this book will do the trick. In some cases it will, and in others it may not. And I really like that line. It will or it won't. And it's okay. It works with some people, it doesn't work with others. But here's the trick. But we think that if you persevere, the percentage of successes will gratify you. And really, at the end of the day, it can't hurt. Reading this book can't make you worse, right? Certainly can't make you drink. But it may help if you have willingness and an open mind. As our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. Meanwhile, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of the book alone. On your employee's return, talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he has the answer. If he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and will not be upset by anything he wishes to say, he will probably be off to a fast start. And isn't that true? We see that happen in a lot of sponsor-sponsee relationships. And it's funny that I keep mentioning that, and I'm like, the sponsor is not your boss, they're not your employer, but I'm just trying to make it relatable. Even if you don't have a boss or if you're not an employer, I think this chapter can be relatable to you. So if the sponsor, where is it here? If the sponsee feels free to discuss their problems with you, if the sponsee knows that you understand and that you will not be upset by anything they wish to say, they will probably be off to a fast start. See how if we change that wording just a little bit, it's a great reminder of the work that we do, the working relationship that we have, sponsor to sponsee. It's a reminder not to be judgmental. I love the slogan, remember when. Remember when you did those things. Remember where you came from, right? There's no higher than thou, mightier than thou thinking. No one is, don't put your sponsor on a pedestal. No one is higher up in this program than anyone else. We're all equal, and we start the day off. Whoever wakes up first is the most sober, has the most hours in the day. In this connection, can you remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things? He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account, or that he has planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say, I like this, almost anything if he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. Little side story, I once broke into the HR office so that I could break into the filing cabinet so that I could find out how much my on-air co-host partner made more than I did, because I had a resentment. And that was something that when I got sober, I confessed to the lady in the HR department. She was an understanding type, and she just said, I wondered how that file ended up on the floor. And we never spoke of it again. And you know what? That great mastermind plan I had, what did that get me? Yeah, I learned he made like $13,000 more a year than me, and I was pissed because we did the same job. So all it did was solidify my resentment. And it could have got me fired, but it didn't. Just lucky, I guess. All right. So yeah, we may tell our employers all kinds of crazy things, because when we get on fire with this program, we want to do all the right things, and we get to that in order, right? Take the steps in order. Don't rush into amends. I did that without actually, doing the steps and talking to a sponsor. I'm just like, oh, I got to get some shit off my chest. Take it slow and seek some guidance and some counsel from your sponsor and do the steps in order. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account and start fresh with him? If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty. Right? And if you think about it, an alcoholic that unburdens themselves to an employer and comes clean is just so grateful to have been able to tell the truth. And then if you accept that truth and you don't fire them, I'm sure they're even more full of gratitude, and that loyalty can only increase. However, they are going to caution them not to be too soft on us. Like, we can't just repeatedly pull the wool over an employer's eyes and expect to get away with it. That's coming up. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics. So this is the education again to the employer from the people who have written this book, but we know this stuff already. We know what our greatest enemies are by this point in the book, right? Resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. And I would add, to name a few. Wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Oh, and by the way, I had highlighted and underlined the greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea, strange, that people are trying to pull us down. Today I would call that paranoia, or fantasy, or fiction. But they very kindly say, often this is not so at all. But sometimes our drinking will be used politically, so it can be used against you. I remember the first time I got sober, I ran around telling everybody. And some of you might know this, I used to do a radio show out on the East Coast. And when I said everybody, I told everybody. I didn't just tell people at work, in the office. I told everyone on the air. And so, little fast, no advice from a sponsor, just making shit up as I go, doing what I want. And I would not recommend that. I was not ready for that. I certainly wasn't ready for the consequences, because of course I went in and demanded that I should no longer do remotes in bars, which was one of our big money makers. And my general manager just said, yeah, that's not going to happen. Do your fucking job. It's like, thanks for the support. Okay. Resentment gathered. I'll just go out the door now with my extra resentments, my frustration, my fear. Oh my God. Am I going to be able to not drink when I go there? Yeah, so ask your sponsor for advice. One instance comes to mind in which a malicious individual was always making friendly little jokes about an alcoholic's drinking exploits. So now they're talking about how the office politics, if you do out yourself maybe a little too publicly, a little too soon, or to people who are untrustworthy, there might be some bitterness and they might use this against you. In this way, he was slyly carrying tales. In another case, an alcoholic was sent to a hospital for treatment. Only a few knew of it at first. Within a short time, it was billboarded throughout the entire company. Gossip, right? Gossip kills. Naturally, this sort of thing decreased the man's chance of recovery. The employer can, many times, protect the victim from this kind of talk. In other words, if you have an HR department or if you're an employer yourself of a small business, get people to protect anonymity, keep their mouths shut. Today, I think we're very lucky in the society and the day and age that we live in. Mental health is protected. They talk about it all the time, and this falls under the guise of mental health. So sometimes people are just on leave. They took a leave of absence for their mental health, and nothing more need be said about it. This is the next line, though. The employer cannot play favorites, but he can always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism. As a class, alcoholics are energetic people. They work hard and they play hard. Your man should be on his mettle to make good. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. Can anyone relate? Filling up your life with other things just so you don't drink? Like, we become really busy, very, very busy. Especially when we're new, just so we don't drink. We tend to overdo things. Or I've seen this happen where someone feels so bad because they're looking at their inventory and they're looking at their life and they're thinking, wow, man, I got to make do. I got to make restitution. And so then they work doubly hard and they're always helping alcoholics and they're always doing service and they're always doing meetings to the point where they become utterly exhausted. And then we're of no use. We're of no good to anyone. We've burnt ourselves out. You can't burn the AA candle at both ends. So this is a reminder once again for balance. Okay. I'm just going to stop your video, Marlon. I have ADHD and it's very distracting. I don't know what that was, but it was distracting me. So I just had to turn that off. All right. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. You may need to encourage him to play once in a while. I didn't get sober just to go to a church basement for the rest of my life or to an online Zoom meeting and do nothing else and to ignore my family and my work obligations just to stay sober and white knuckle life. I got sober so that I could have a life, so that I could get my life back. So remember to have balance. But I also remember where I came from. I also remember the people that helped me. So I am committed to helping other people because that's what keeps me away from that last drink. And I'm committed to doing service because those things help keep me out of self. So again, it's this fine balance, this line that we learn. He may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of the sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety. And there it is, that reminder of, in order for me to be able to stay sober and emotionally sober and spiritually fit, one of the things I have to do is to help another alcoholic. And if you're so lucky, and some people are, that honesty with an employer can go a long way where there's a little bit of latitude. I had that experience this year when a couple of times I said, I need to step away. I really need to go to a meeting. And they know me. So they were like, yeah, sure, whatever you need, Lisa, no problem. Or I got to step away. I'd tell them in advance, somebody I'm working with is in crisis today. So I might have to step away from my desk. Are you okay with that? No problem. Now I'm in a new place, so I have to rebuild those relationships and open myself up. But I'm slowly sussing the place out first. So I'm doing things differently today, cautiously. All right. After your man has gone along without drinking for a few months, you may, I love how they say may, be able to make use of his services with other employees who are giving you the alcoholic runaround, right? It's like, having trouble? hire the bloodhound, because he knows. The alcoholic has been there before. He can suss out those lies, provided, of course, they are willing to have a third party in the picture. An alcoholic who has recovered but holds a relatively unimportant job can talk to a man with a better position. Being on a radically different basis of life, he will never take advantage of the situation. And do you remember how in the beginning it talked about we are like people on a shipwreck, right? And we have that camaraderie, even though we come from different classes, because we've survived together the great peril. So this is why an alcoholic, it doesn't matter what your position is in life. I've seen janitors help CEOs in Alcoholics Anonymous. Status doesn't matter, because we are all equal, and the alcoholic can understand the other alcoholic like no one else. Your man may be trusted. Long experience with alcoholic excuses naturally arouses suspicion. When his wife next calls saying he is sick, you might jump to the conclusion he is drunk. If he is, and is still trying to recover, he will tell you about it, even if it means the loss of his job. Now that means he will tell you about it if he's an alcoholic who is in recovery working a 12-step program. Probably if he's just stopped drinking for a little while and then picked up again, he's not going to be honest, because he hasn't been given the tools of this program. But the alcoholic in Alcoholics Anonymous is one who can earn that trust back of an employer. He will appreciate knowing you are not bothering your head about him, that you are not suspicious, nor are you trying to run his life, so he will be shielded from the temptation to drink. If he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, he can go anywhere your business may call him. And see, that's what I didn't know when I went into my boss's office one day and said, I can't do those remotes anymore in bars. I might drink. I hadn't done the work. If I'd done the work, then I recoil from it as if a hot flame, because I now know, oh yeah, it's the first drink. So don't have one. Don't fool yourself. Don't be delusional. Don't even think you can have just one, and stay away from it. In case he does stumble even once, you will have to decide whether to let him go. If you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. If, on the contrary, you are sure he is doing his utmost, you may wish to give him another chance, but you should feel under no obligation to keep him on, for your obligation has been well discharged already. By being open, by being willing, the employer did their best to try to help the alcoholic. There is another thing you might wish to do. If your organization is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. You might let them know you have no quarrel with the alcoholics of your organization. These juniors are often in a difficult position. Men under them are frequently their friends, so for one reason or another, they cover these men, hoping matters will take a turn for the better. They often jeopardize their own positions by trying to help serious drinkers who should have been fired long ago, or else given an opportunity to get well. It's interesting. I don't think we see this so much today. There's, large organizations and companies, they have HR departments, human resources that handle these kinds of things. But what I have still seen is one alcoholic helping another, where you, as an employee, see someone else struggling. Maybe you've noticed that they stink of alcohol, or they skip a lot of days. They call in late all the time. They look worse for wear more often than not. And if it comes up in conversation, the difficulties that they're having, you're in the position where you might want to disclose of yourself and talk about how you can understand. And you've had those problems too. And you found a way out. And you could share it with them if they would be interested. And if they're not, that's okay too. After reading this book, a junior executive can go to such a man and say approximately this: "Look here, Ed." I love how they tell you exactly what to say. "Well, look here, Ed. Do you want to stop drinking or not? You put me on the spot every time you get drunk, old man. It isn't fair to me or the firm." Okay, they didn't throw in old man, but I thought that kind of fit. I've been learning something about alcoholism. If you are an alcoholic, you are a mighty sick man. You act like one. The firm wants to help you get over it, and if you are interested, there is a way out. If you take it, your past will be forgotten, page 148, and the fact that you went away for treatment will not be mentioned. But if you cannot or will not stop drinking, I think you ought to resign. It's like they gave him a little script. But it's basically what our program says, right? If you want what we have, then we're free to give it to you. We're willing to give it to you. All you have to do is follow these suggestions. And if you don't want it, that's okay too. Your junior executive may not agree with the contents of our book. He need not, and often should not, show it to his alcoholic prospect, but at least he will understand the problem and will no longer be misled by ordinary promises. He will be able to take a position with such a man which is eminently fair and square. He will have no further reason for covering up an alcoholic employee, right? Just the facts. It boils right down to this. No man should be fired just because he is an alcoholic. Thank God for this book. And thank God for Dr. Silkworth, because we learned that it is a disease. It is an illness. Addiction is an illness, but it can be treated. So if you wouldn't fire a cancer patient because they got sick, you would give them time off for treatment. So it's the same thing for this. We got sick and now we're asking for help. But I also understand from the employer's perspective, if they repeatedly give us help time and time again, they got to draw the line somewhere. And this is a reminder for me as an employee to let go of old resentments. Maybe I was let go from a position and I really hated that employer for so long. Like, how dare they? Well, if I look at my own behavior, I can see just how they dared. Just how they dared. I was certainly that guy who showed up on a Tuesday when workday started on a Monday. And then how could they? Well, maybe if you'd show up for work once in a while, you'd know. We think this method of approach will accomplish several things. It will permit the rehabilitation of good men. At the same time, you will feel no reluctance to rid yourself of those who cannot or will not stop. Alcoholism may be causing your organization considerable damage in its waste of time, men, and reputation. We hope our suggestions will help you plug up these sometimes serious leaks. We think we are sensible when we urge that you stop this waste and give your worthwhile man a chance. The other day, an approach was made to the vice president of a large industrial concern. He remarked, "I'm mighty glad you fellows got over your drinking, but the policy of this company is not to interfere with the habits of our employees. If a man drinks so much that his job suffers, we fire him. I don't see how you can be of any help to us, for, as you see, we don't have an alcoholic problem." Right? They don't have an alcoholic problem because they just fire them. This same company spends millions for research every year. Their cost of production is figured to a fine decimal point. They have recreational facilities. There is company insurance. There is a real interest, both humanitarian and business, in the well-being of employees. But alcoholism, well, they just don't believe they have it. Perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, had to smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. He might be shocked if he knew how much alcoholism is costing his organization a year. That company may harbor many actual or potential alcoholics. We believe that managers of large enterprises often have little idea how prevalent this problem is. Even if you feel your organization has no alcoholic problem, it might pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. As to them, his policy is undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic. It is not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made a favorite. The right kind of man, the kind who recovers, will not want this sort of thing. He will not impose. Far from it. He will work like the devil and thank you to his dying day. Today, I own a little company. There are 2 alcoholic employees. who produce as much as 5 normal salesmen. But why not? They have a new attitude, and they have been saved from a living death. I have enjoyed every moment spent in getting them straightened out. And then it says, see Appendix 6. We shall be happy to hear from you if we can be of help. So that if the employer was reading this, they would then go to Appendix 6. Excuse me. So let's do that. It's in the back of the book. Just before, after the medical opinion. How to get in touch with AA. In my book, it's page 573, but it could differ depending on what printing you have. In the United States and Canada, most towns and cities have AA groups. In such places, AA can be located through the local telephone directory, newspaper office, or police station. That is true. Or by contacting local priests or ministers. In large cities, groups often maintain local offices where alcoholics or their families may arrange for interviews or hospitalization. These so-called intergroup associates are found under the listing AA or Alcoholics Anonymous in telephone directories. Remember, we have an intergroup rep. We have an online intergroup rep, and now we have a local Toronto intergroup rep. And these people go to our intergroup meetings, and then they bring back information and do reports for us. And intergroup is there as they're just a fountain of information. Archives are usually kept there, so your local groups, your local areas archive information. The history of AA is gathered by volunteers. Usually they have a small working group of people that we pay to run the office because the rest of us have other jobs. And then a lot of things that go on there are done by volunteers, like answering the phones, answering the AA telephone directory, the helpline. At New York, USA, Alcoholics Anonymous maintains its International Service Center, the General Service Board of AA, the trustees, administrators of AA's General Service Office, AA World Services, Inc., and our monthly magazine, the AA Grapevine, right? Every organization needs some form of structure. It needs people to run it. So they have formed these committees, and that's why we have the concepts too to help us with that, because our traditions carry forth into our business enterprises as well. If you cannot find AA in your locality, visit our website. It's still the same, www.aa.org, or a letter addressed to Alcoholics Anonymous, Box 459, Grand Central Station, New York, New York, 10163 USA. Will receive a prompt reply from this World Center, referring you to the nearest AA group. If there is none nearby, you will be invited to carry on correspondence, which will do much to ensure your sobriety, no matter how isolated you are. Should you be the relative or friend of an alcoholic who shows no immediate interest in AA, it is suggested that you write the Al-Anon Family Groups Incorporation, 1600 Corporate Landing Parkway, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23454-5617, USA. This is a world clearinghouse for the Al-Anon family groups, composed largely of the wives, husbands, and friends of Alcoholics Anonymous members. This headquarters will give the location of the nearest family group and will, if you wish, correspond with you about your special problems. And I've contacted World Service Office on a number of occasions, one to register groups. This group, AA Solution Seekers, needed to be registered. Another group that I was a part of needed to be registered. I remember somebody was upset with something one of the groups was doing, and they wanted to know who was in charge. And I said, nobody's in charge. There are no leaders. We are all but servants. Well, I'm going to write the World Service. I said, go ahead. I encourage you to do that. That is a great idea, because I've been that disgruntled person who fired off an email to the World Service Organization, and I got back some amazing information on traditions and how They don't get involved in our business and our politics. Each group has its own conscience. That's what we do at the local level. We try to let God be the judge, and that works as long as people remain steadfast in the traditions. No cliques, no gossiping, no, hey, I'm going to vote this, you vote that way. It's like, what would God have me be? And can I keep an open mind in this meeting? And can I be present in this meeting? Those things really work. Next chapter is chapter 11, A Vision for You. So that's where we're going to stop at the end of Two Employers. And next time we'll be picking up at the top of page 151 in a brand new chapter. This is the last chapter in this portion of the book before you get to the stories. And then we will figure out what we're doing next. I don't know if we're going to do the 12 and 12 or if we'll cycle through. Another idea is for me to get some of you to take over leading this big book study. And then it would be consistent Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And I won't always be the person leading it, which I think would be fun too. And we'll still record it. So at this time, anyone is free to share right now. Or if you wish and you don't want to be on the recording, you can send me a message and I will stop the recording so everyone gets an opportunity to share. Does anyone feel like discussing To the Employers? Carla put her hand up. Go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Carla. I'm an alcoholic. So this was one of the chapters that I never read before, pretty much like To the Agnostics, because I thought this doesn't apply. But what I notice about this, and I like looking at it like sponsor and sponsee because it's more relatable. But I also, how many times did they say will or will not? I mean, several times. And, and that just leads me because I turn it around on myself. Am I a will or am I a will not today? Not yesterday, because yesterday I was a will. Tomorrow, hopefully, God willing, I'll be a will. But yeah, am I a will or a will not? And I was a will not for a really long time. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff all throughout this book, and perspective is everything. When I was drinking and going in and out, trying to read this, I mean, man, I just didn't get it. It took me decades, decades. But I'm here today, and I'm always finding stuff when I look at it, through where I'm at today as opposed to where I was at 6 months ago or even a year ago. It's just different. And there's just so much good stuff in here, at least for me. And Lisa, what's a telephone directory? That's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Said people under 20.
Right?
Telephone. What's a telephone book? Yeah, I know. And a payphone, a public telephone. Can't believe we don't even have those anymore. They came in handy. Yeah, To the Employer. And if you're anything like me, Carla, I get a resentment just about anything, right? Like I didn't want to read this because at the time I was going through the steps that last time with Luke, I was unemployed. I'm not reading that fucking To the Employers. I'll write a book myself to the employers. Or to the wives. My relationship had ended. I don't want to read that. Family afterward? Nope. They were not just the forgotten chapters for me. They were the I will not ever read those chapters. It's kind of like when you make your amends list. These are the ones I'm willing to do. These are the ones that I might consider. These are not the ones I'm never gonna. And then your sponsor goes, let's start with those ones. Oh, there's always a catch. Yeah. So To the Employer, I took me a while to get to it too. I guess that's what I'm saying. It took me a while to be able to read it and to open up my mind. And looking at it from a different perspective certainly helps. And a reminder that we do all have the same employer when it comes right down to it, right? It talks about that in the big book, that Arch to Freedom. We have a new employer. He is the director. He is the principal. He is the father. We are his children. We are his agents. We are but servants. And if we carry that attitude of service in all we do, I find things run pretty smoothly in my life. I don't get resentments. I don't get my nose bent out of shape as often or as frequently, if at all. Miracles. Does anyone else want to comment? Margot raised her hand. Come on in, Margot. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, having trouble with that. Hi, everybody, Margot. It's a good chapter, and I did get to listen to most of your podcast from last week. So I wasn't just picking up in the middle. I really appreciated reading this. And when I was still working, I got into a situation where I suddenly became management. And I wish that I had been able to read this chapter then. However, because I belong to it, I heard somebody talking about this professional organization, and having gone to twice yearly professional state meetings, I knew that we had a good liaison for impaired professionals. And I knew who that person was who gave me direction on how to handle the scenario. It was an amazing experience, and I wouldn't want to have to go through it a second time. I ended up being the person with HR support, did the intervention, but HR had people lined up. We got all the ducks lined up in a row, and within a couple hours, that person went to rehab. But a couple of things I ran into was page 146, something about the mental readjustment, and he may overdo. I love that chapter because us alcoholics tend to work hard and play hard. And someone in early recovery may turn to working a lot to avoid going to meetings, to avoid doing what they need to do to learn how to stay sober. The other thing that came into play, and with the individual that I had to deal with, going back into the department, having been named interim manager, people wanted to know where that other person was going. Why was he leaving? And that person is protected by the HIPAA laws. I could not speak to what was going on with him. Yeah, I mean, I was in recovery and I know about anonymity and people's right to do that, but you may be covered by law not to discuss a coworker's addiction or alcoholism. And that made it very difficult as a manager. Upper management and HR, they had all the inside information. I love the other part you said, and I can't find my marginal note, but new attitudes are really important. And I love that. But one thing that I have had to refer to so many times, page 149. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. I just emphasize sick people. And for me, I'm one of those, I carry that app on my phone and all those prayers are in it. And if I'm in central Pennsylvania, Dutch country, if I get verdutzt, I get aggravated because of someone whose behavior is annoying me, I have to look at my app and I have to repeat the sick man's prayer because I need to remind myself, oh, dear God, what it must have been like with people who had to deal with me at my worst. And so I can never forget that aspect. And it's been a long time. And I think that covered all my little notes. And it's all I have to share for now.
That's great. Thank you, Margot. Anyone else? Brenda, come on in.
Hi, Brenda, alcoholic. Actually, I worked for a bigger company as a manager, and they had an HR department in the store, and we had an HR manager. And I went to her originally and said I needed a mental health leave through my doctor and everything, and didn't tell her the whole truth, but said I had mental health issues and was going into a program through the hospital. While I was going through that program, we came to the conclusion that I already knew before I went in that I was an alcoholic. So then I went to rehab. So when I came out of rehab, I realized that I really didn't want to do the manager job because in that company, when you were a manager, you could work as many hours as you wanted. It was salary. It wasn't hourly. And I realized that I was a workaholic as well. So for my mental health and everything, I stepped down and I was very lucky. I got a really good position, but without the management responsibilities, and it was an hourly thing. Then I was honest with my HR manager and said, I need to go to meetings. And I worked an early shift, 5 to 12. So basically what we did was I took my lunch at 11:30 to 12 and left because it was a noon meeting. So the HR manager knew, but my actual manager of the area I was in didn't know. And then one day I did share with her and she had no clue. So it was kept very confidential. And then shortly after that, the company came up with a mental health ambassador program. So I volunteered for that because that's so true. You do want to make up and you do want to, make amends in any way that you can. And that was mine. So I went through a program through the company with that, had a big company board, and I became, if somebody was crying at work or something, they would come and get me type of thing because I had some training and things like that. So I see that whole sort of thing because I was very grateful because I was, the one that came in Tuesdays, which is a classic sign if somebody's off on a weekend and they don't come in Monday. And if you see a pattern, and yeah, so I actually was really grateful for my company and I ended up retiring from that company. So yeah, but if you work for a smaller company, it may not, there may not be as many benefits or programs type of thing. But my experience with my company was, yeah, very professional. And I at no time, plus when you come back to work, your work ethic is really good. So nobody can say anything, even if there is sort of rumors going around. It's like, well, hey, did you hear? Why was she off or something? Then hey, she's coming to work every day. She's doing her job. She's doing all these things. So yeah, I mean, I had some bumps in the road, but luckily because I was open and honest with them, I continued there until I retired type of thing. So, but yeah, I've heard other stories where, it gets out. But again, if you're in recovery and you're doing the steps, then it's your behavior and your actions. That's what people see. So yeah, so I was grateful for that company and, now it's closed, but yeah, it was a healthy experience for me, to be honest with my employer. But again, very careful at the beginning to protect myself. Thank you.
It's nice. I like that line. We stand on our own 2 feet. We crawl before no one. Right. And we can say things like, I'm an alcoholic. And I've said it not too long ago at work, and I laughed at the people who were like, but you came out to that event and you partied with us and you sang karaoke and you were having a great, I'm like, yeah, sober. And they're just like baffled. They're a baffled lot. Because I work with a lot of people who do not know how to handle life on life's terms. And unfortunately, I see a lot of sickness around me. And I can't call people alcoholic, and it's not my business to. But if ever anyone says, I have this problem and I really don't know what to do about it, I'm ready. I'm ready to help. Does anyone else want to share before we close the meeting? Laura, you'd turned your camera on for a moment. Looked like you were getting ready to share, but maybe something got busy there. All right. Okay. We'll close then, guys. Thank you so much for showing up. There is not a big book study this Saturday. There is not one on Tuesday. The next one will also be on a Wednesday. So I will put that in our group chat. All right. Thank you very much. Let's close with the serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Shot glass.